Good afternoon and welcome to my Facebook Live. Just let me find us quickly here on my tablet so I can see you all as you're coming on. I think we've got us up there. Okay, let me just pop that there out of our road. Okay, word of warning, this could be a long Facebook Live today, so I hope you've got your cuppa. And I'm hoping you're ready to join us. So as soon as you pop on, please say hello. Let me know where you're from if you haven't been here visiting my page before. So I'm going to get started. Again, I've still got internet connection issues, so if I sort of pop in and out a little bit, I'm terribly sorry about that. Hi Glenda, how are you? Hi Shelley, great to have you all here. So we're going to play with today the Be Jolly stamp set. So let me just turn my camera over. So bear with me for 1 sec. So today we're going to be making a card using the Be Jolly. And the card that I came up with last night is this one here. It's quite a fun little card with lots of colouring in and a bit of stamping using the Stamparatus. So there's lots of things I want to share with you and talk to you today about making this card. So I'm going to get started, and we're going to create, to start off with, the background. But first off, I'm just going to go through all the measurements. Please just remember, I will post all the measurements and everything on my blog over the weekend. So if you don't catch the measurements, you can go back there to see them. So we're going to need to start off with our card base. Now I'm using today a piece of garden green, and that's 10.5 centimeters by 29.9, and I've scored that at 14.9. I just had to feel that to make sure I had scored it because I couldn't quite see it, but it's scored there at 14.9. So I might just fold that now in half, and we're just going to get our bone folder and just crease that down so that's nice and creased, ready to go. So that's our card base. You're also going to need a piece of real red, and that's 10 centimeters by 14.4. We're going to need a piece of crumb cake for our card front. Now at the moment I've cut this at 10.5 by 14.9. Usually I cut all my cardstock that I'm going to be using for card fronts and mats at 10.5 by 14.9, and then it's just easier just to cut it down that little bit more. But for stamping purposes, I'm going to start off with the 10.5 by 14.9, and then a little bit later on we'll cut it down to 9.7 by 14.1. You also need a piece of basic white, and that's going to be the insert for our card. So that's at 10 centimeters by 14.4 centimeters. You'll need a piece of vellum. Now this vellum I've already pre-cut, and I've cut this using the stitched rectangle dies, and this die measures approximately 3.5 centimeters by 8.7 centimeters. So it's one of the smaller ones. And then you will need just a scrap of basic white, which I've already stamped our Santa Claus on, and a scrap of basic black, which we're going to do some embossing on a little while later. So to start off with, we're going to start with our crumb cake. So let me just move everything else out of the road for the moment, and I'm going to bring in my soft suede stamp pad. Let me remove that. Okay, now, so I have my Stamparatus here, and what I've already done is I've already lined this up. Now I've put a couple of marks here on my plate here. It's not halfway, but it's what I'm calling halfway for the purposes of this card. And I have lined up my stamp again at what I've considered as my halfway. It's not half my piece of cardstock because I've positioned everything so then I can move things about, and you'll see that as we go through. So as I said, I've cut this down to 10 centimeters or 10.5 by the 14.9, and I'm just going to work this out. What have we got? To about there, and I've coming down now. I've got my grid paper using the inch side because it just worked out better for this. So I've brought it an inch down from the top, and I've got it around about 2 inches coming in at the side. So I'm just going to line that up. Now that's my center line there, which along the grid paper at the bottom is at that 4-inch mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make sure I've got that all straight. I'm going to pop a stamp set just underneath this here, just to support my plate there. Now I do like to sort of play around with this a little bit before I start stamping to make sure that I've got this positioned where I want it to go. So I've just done a little bit of a template here, and that's going to be like my finished size. So I've worked out that if I stamp my first stamp in the center, and then I can stamp one below the other, and then I can come across and do these ones on the sides. Okay, so they're basically at my halfway mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to then take this line across to here. Now I've just got to remember on my, because I've cut my crumb cake that little bit bigger, that it is a bit bigger than where I actually want it. So I'm going to just pop a couple little marks here. You're not going to see them, and that's just going to be roughly, I have to line those marks up with this arrow here in the center to be able to stamp those two side ones. And then we're going to take the stamp off and reposition it to get the other ones that I need. So let's just start by stamping this. So I've lined all this up, so then that will stamp there in the center. So I'm working symmetrically, where I'm going to have a center line and then work myself out from that point. So I hope that all makes sense. I'm sure it will once you start seeing what I'm doing. So I'm going to stamp that in the center there. Now by using the Stamparatus, it's allowing me to make sure that everything's going to be lined up, so I know that the next stamp that I stamp is going to be perfectly in line underneath there. And I've got to move this down 3 notches, so it's 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to check without putting it down. Yes, so it's 3 notches, and we're going to stamp that again, just holding my plates there at that hinge nice and straight, just to make sure that I'm getting straight area there. I'm going to stamp that right there. Now I'm going to move this across, so my little pencil mark there is going to line up again with that arrow there, and we want to make sure that that's brought up nice and straight at the top there. Pop down my, so we take that right back to the beginning. So pop my magnet down there, ink up my stamp again, and we're going to stamp again. Again, we're going to move it down 1, 2, 3. Ink that up again. Whoops, we just might move that magnet out of the road a little bit there, and stamp. So we're just going to remove this magnet, and now we're going to bring that other line, and it's not going to quite, I'm just going to have to trim this down, sorry folks. So I'm just going to actually trim this down to my 10 centimeter width. That might make that a little bit easier. So we're just going to take this down to 10. Probably should have started at that right from the very start, because this does fit in very close. So now I'm going to bring again that 1 inch down and in line with that center line there. That'll make things a lot easier, won't it? And we're going to stamp again there. Bring that down 1, 2, 3. And stamp. Unfortunately, I've lost all comments on my tablet, so if I don't see your comment and don't reply back to you now, I will get back to you after. Okay, so now we've got that stamped there. So now we need to stamp the ones that are going in the center. So we're just going to clean this down with my chamois. Make sure that's nice and clean. Pop my chamois back in there. And now we're just going to, again, reposition this, taking this back into that center line again. Pop my magnet there. And this time I'm just going to position that in between those 4 trees there. And that should be lining up with this arrow just here, theoretically. Don't mind if they're just a little bit out. Let's take this down and collect that stamp. And let's hope, fingers crossed, we've got this all correct. So we've got that one there. And I have just realised that even though that's in the right position, I really need to take that up higher, which is what I did yesterday. So what I did last night was actually position this about there. So let me just see if I can position this again on top of that. Things don't always go the way we originally planned. That's okay. We can still work this out. So I've got to bring that down to the second, or maybe the third one. No, we'll go the second. And the reason why we've done that is if I come back up here, no, I can't do it there. Oh dear. Best laid plans never seem to want to work. Let's just try this again. It all worked last night really well. That's okay. We have to move this around. We have to move this around. So let's just move this across one and just see where it's going to take us. No, you need to go right across to the edge. That's going to give us that one beautifully. Okay, so we're going to get ink that one up, and we will get that one. You're going to bring this down. Let's try about there, maybe a bit more. Let's go there, a bit more. Perfect. So we want that one there. And we're going to move this back to there. Ink that up again. Stamp that one there. Now, I'm really sorry about my internet, how it's sort of playing up a little bit, so I hope you're still with me. I will keep going, and if you don't catch all of this now, you will be able to catch it hopefully on my replay or on my YouTube channel. If you do go over to my YouTube channel, please like it and help me out there. Now I just want to do 2 more little ones just here, so I'm just going to line this up by eye again and pop one in there. That'll just make life so much easier. I think this is just all the storms and everything that are around at the moment causing a lot of this. And then we're going to move that right across and do the last one. But as you can see there, that is just how I've done those. So I hope you've got the idea on how to use your Stamp-A-Majig for stamping over those areas. As I said, I just like to work from a center point and then work outwards. So I'm just going to take this piece out now, and we're just going to bring in the trimmer and trim this down. Now we've already trimmed it down the width, so I need now to take a little bit off top and bottom because we want this to be 14.1. Sorry, we're going to go 9.7, so we need to cut a little bit more off. So 9.7. I'm going to take a little bit off there. Better off taking off little bits than taking off too much because we can't put it back. I might bring in the guillotine because it can cut down to a more of an accurate measurement. 9.7. I'm just going to take a little bit more off that side and a little bit more off this side. That's keeping our trees in the center. And then we need to take this to 14.1. So if we go 14.1, we're just going to be cutting off a little bit there. So I'm just going to go up a little bit higher, cut a bit there off, and 14.1. Beautiful. Took a little while, but we got there in the end. So let's put that trimmer away and pop this trimmer away. Okay, so that's that. And if I can work out where we've put all our bits and pieces, here they are. I'm just going to adhere that now onto our Real Red mat. So that's going to go on there, and I'm going to use some multi-purpose glue. Now it looks like things are still playing up a little bit, so I can't see any comments at all. So please just say hello, let me know you've been on, and I will contact you and thank you for watching after the video has finished. If you've got any questions, I will answer them then as well. So there's that. Just get that good rub down at the back, spread that ink around. Just move that across a little bit more because we've still got a little bit of time for play. There you go. So that's our matted card front, which will eventually go on to here with some dimensionals. So the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of colouring in. And I've got my pre-stamped. Now we are going to colour this in using our blends. So I have stamped this using Memento ink. Remember, if you are using alcohol-based pens like the Stampin' Up blends, you do need to use an ink that's not going to react with the alcohol. So you use the opposite. So if you're using alcohol pens such as your blends, then you're going to use a water-based ink such as Memento. If you're doing watercoloring, then you're going to use something like StazOn, which is an alcohol-based. So the colours I'm using in my blends is going to be, I've got here my dark real red and light real red. So we're going to be using those. I've also got a dark cherry cobbler, which we'll be using that one as well. We're going to be using the black in the alcohol markers, a grey as well, and then we've got, sorry, I was colouring in a few other things, so I've got a few other extra colours. We're also going to be using ivory for his face, and his cheeks we're going to be using Flirty Flamingo in the light. So that's what we're going to use to colour. So we're going to start off with, and I've also got here my colour lifter, just in case, and there's a few little tricks I want to show you that you can use that for. Now every time when I start using my blends, I always start with my light colour first, and I like to be able to lay down a good layer of the light colour. So I'm going to take my light, and I'm using my fine tip pen because we're working in a fairly small area. You usually only want to work in a small area at a time because we want to put our other colours on while our blend is still wet. So we're just going to very quickly and in a circular motion just lay down that light real red. Don't go too close to the edges and let that ink a little bit sort of seep outwards a little bit so we don't sort of go over our lines, but I'm not worrying about that too much because in this case we're actually going to cut this centre out. So I just want to lay down quite a bit of this red, because what you want to do is actually have this saturated on the back almost fully, so it's not quite there. So let's just put some more colour onto there, and that just allows us to be able to blend our ink. Oops, a little bit of a bug there. So let's just have a look, see how we're going. Yep, I've almost got that fully saturated, so that is good. So now I'm going to bring in my dark cherry cobbler, and I'm going to start, and again I'm using fine tip, and I'm just going to start layering down some shadowing. Once I've done a little bit of shadowing with my dark cherry cobbler, I'm bringing in my dark real red, and I'm going to blend that out a little bit. And then I'm going to come back over again with my light real red just to blend that all in together. And that's pretty much what we're going to do all through this. So I'm just working a little bit at a time, just because your alcohol ink doesn't take long to dry. So I do want to work quickly and in small areas, so I've got plenty of time to work my other colours in. Making sure I've got good saturation there. And then we're just going to bring in that dark cherry cobbler again. and just bring in some shading. Back in with my dark real red and just bring that colour, that shading out a little bit more. You don't have to bring the two sides together to meet, because you do want a bit of darkness to light, and then bringing in our light one again just to finish blending those colours together. Now, because this is such a small area, I'm not going to be worrying too much about getting full saturation here. Just keep working those colours. And then actually I might just not worry about the light one here, but just bring this straight in, because it's going to be fairly dark underneath there anyway. So we get a lot of shadowing under there. Just going to bring just a little bit of cherry cobbler. When you work with alcohol inks, you should always have a piece of paper underneath, because the colour is saturating through. It will saturate through to whatever you've got underneath as well. So always make sure you've got a bit of scrap paper just underneath where you're working. Let's do his arms before we forget his arms. So I hope you can see that well enough. Unfortunately, I'm using my phone and I can't bring this in closer to you, so you'll just have to bear with me, I'm sorry. Let me just bring that up closer now. Okay, it's decided to, so let's have a look. That's it there. I hope you can see some of that colour difference there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the black. We're going to start with our lightest in the black, and again the fine tip. Just work on his boots. Now these are very small areas, so I'm not worrying too much about these, blending them in. I just want to put a little bit of shading here. And now his gloves, actually his belt first. And his gloves. Okay, so now his face. So I'm just going to go over to his ears. Can't forget those, and I'm just using the ivory for this. Again, just colouring in a little bit of a circular motion, just laying down plenty of colour. And all I'm going to do here is just put a little bit of colour on his nose and a little bit of colour in his cheeks. Again, his mouth. And then I'm just going to blend this again all over. And that'll just take out a little bit of that pinkness out of that and just blend it into that ivory. Now it will slightly change in colour as it dries. Let me just remove all of those, because what we need next is some Daffodil Delight, just so then we can do his belt. And then all I'm going to do, I've got the lighter in the grey smoky slate, and I'm just going to colour in his eyebrows, and we're just going to put some like highlights in the smoky slate. So I'm not really colouring much in, I'm just putting some highlights in there. And then I'm going to, before that dries too much, I'm coming in with my colour lifter and I'm just softening. So I'm not taking, because what the colour lifter does, the colour lifter actually pushes the colour outwards. So it pushes the colour away. So all I'm doing is I'm just going around the edges of that smoky slate that I've already laid, and just going around it with the colour lifter, which is just softening all those edges. That's all I want to do, is just soften those edges. So it's just giving a little bit of a shade. We're going to do the same thing with his gloves. Just put a little bit of colour. And then just working with that colour lifter just to sort of those edges, just to soften them a little bit. And then we're going to do the same thing with his beard. Just add a little bit of colour in there. And then we're just going to use these lines that Stampin' Up have given us. Again, come in with that colour lifter and just soften those edges. Okay, and there's our Santa, all coloured. So now what we're going to do, we're going to cut our Santa out. Now there's a few different ways you can cut Santa out. Well, let me just grab my cutting tool. Now there's a few different ways you can cut him out. I have done a short video on this once before, but you can use your straight edge scissors to cut out your Santa. You can use a pair of curved nail clippers, because what that does is allows you to follow the curve. So okay, let's just use this tree for an example. I did have another little Santa stamped somewhere. I think he's over here. No. Okay, so let's just have a look at this tree. Because your nail scissors are slightly curved, what that allows you to do is follow the curve. So when you're cutting with scissors, what you want to do is you want to not so much move your blade, but move your paper. And what the actual nail scissors will do, because they've already got a curve in them, they will help you to follow that curve. Now that's just a little trick that I learned many years ago doing paper towel. But I actually prefer using a glass plate. So what I've got here is a piece of glass out of a picture frame. If you go to the reject shop and so forth and you buy a picture frame from there, just make sure that the frame has actually got real glass in it. So this is a glass plate, and I've just put some masking tape around it. I've had these for years, and I use a craft knife. Make sure your craft knife is quite sharp, because your glass plates will actually blunten your knife. And it's the same sort of process as cutting with your paper. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to move your paper rather than moving your knife. If you try to cut something like this on a self-healing mat, what happens is your blade gets stuck in the mat and it doesn't give you that nice smooth turning circle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to pop my blade where I want to start, and I am moving my blade probably slightly, but I'm actually more moving my paper rather than my blade, and it actually glides over the glass underneath. So you sort of are able to get more of a smoother cut, and you can actually probably go even closer cut than what you will do with a pair of scissors. So you just want to work fairly slowly. You don't want to sort of rush this too much, and sometimes it does take a little bit of practice. It's been a while since I've actually cut something out like this, because I don't usually do fussy cutting. There's a lot of little tight corners, so you do have to sort of move your hand a little bit there to get that, and just come in, just following the outline. And just work your way slowly around your Santa. Now I am pushing fairly firmly down with my craft knife, because I do want to make sure I'm cutting all the way through my cardstock. I don't want to have to go back and start trimming things up if I don't have to. Now you can buy glass cutting plates in the market. I don't know what brands are out there, but as I said, just as long as you make sure you've got glass for a picture frame, it will work just as well. And I've had this piece of glass for many years now, and it's not scratched up or anything, so it does last very long time. So I've just got one more side of Santa just to finish. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could cut Santa out with 1 millimeter or so around him. But for this purpose, I think cutting right on the edge is quite okay. Okay, so let's see if that's all. Might need to go through a few little areas again. See how we went. I think I need a sharper blade. That's better. Sometimes getting into these little tight areas here, you lift your hand up a little bit and it just catches on all those little but there we go. That's that arm loose. Just to go around that pom-pom again, just to make sure that we've got him. Just be very careful there because it's not much there joining him. Okay. There we go, that's better. Okay, so there's our Santa. All cut out. Now you can see a little bit of white edges all the way around, and the easiest way to get rid of that is you get your smoky slate, and we're just going to run that just all the way around some of those white edges just to take off a little bit of that whiteness. Beautiful. So let me just remove this glass plate and pop him away. Okay, so now we've sort of got one more thing to do, and that is to make our tag before we put this card together. So we've got our Santa. Oh, we need to put one more thing. We can't have Santa without a little bit of bling. So I've just got my Winkostella, and I'm just going to put a little bit on his ball of his hat. Just give that a bit of a squeeze just to make sure we've got plenty of that coming down. Put a bit on his brim of his hat. Just let me bring that light in just that little bit closer there. And we need some on his cuffs and a little bit on his buckle as well. So have we got enough bling on there? Yep. I'll just pop a little bit more there. Santa looks a little bit like he's got caught in the chimney a bit, but that's okay. So there's our Santa with his bling. So we'll pop him over there, and we need our scrap of cardstock, and I have got somewhere here. There we go. Just got that. We need some Versamark. Got our sentiment, be jolly, and we're just going to stamp that there. Got some white embossing powder, so I'll just pop some of that on. Just flick away any excess. Remove that. So I'm just going to grab the heat gun and we will heat up our big jolly. Always fun watching that embossing powder melt. And then I've got one of the tags from the Tailored Made tags, and we're just going to line that up where we want that to be. And I've just got my tape here, so line that up on there. Just going to cut away some of this excess cardstock and bring in the cut and emboss machine. And just run that through there. Just like to run it through twice just to make sure that it's cut. Love that little machine. It's really good and handy being so small. And we can remove. Sounds like I'm going to have to get some rain. Remove that, and there's our tag. So now we can start putting some of this together. So we've got our Santa, we've got our matted card front, we've got our base, we've got our piece of vellum, and we need some baker's twine in the white. And we're just going to wrap this around. Now I'm just going to cheat here and use a piece of sticky tape. Work out where I want this to go. I want it about there. I'm just going to hold it down at the back, and I'm going to wrap this around once, twice, 3 times. Bring that back in. And then all I'm going to do is just put some tape or something just on the back there, just to hold that all down. Move this where I want it. I think that's going to be roughly around about where that's going to go. Yep. So once we've got that, we can then put some dimensionals on the back. So I'm just using my large dimensionals. I like to put a few of these on. A couple down the centre just to give that support. Ooh, bit of thunder happening out there. Sometime during the night, I don't know what time it was, but it woke me up. But we had a lot of rain last night, so Looks like we're getting some more, which we can't complain. Okay, so position that on top of there with dimensionals. Now I've got my piece of vellum here and it's got a stitched edge, so just making sure I've got the rough side of the stitching going downwards. I'm just going to pop a little bit of adhesive onto the back of Mr. Claus. I'm really just putting that down through the center. I'm going to position that onto there like that. And then on the back of him again, we're going to add a couple of more dimensionals on the back of the vellum. And Santa hides those dimensionals rather well, leaving a gap in between because he's going to, we're going to have those two dimensionals going either side of that baker's twine. And then he's just going to sit just like that on there. Now this is my bow maker. This is something I have had made up. A friend of mine's made these. So anyone who places a $50 order, $50 or more, will be sent one of these as a little gift from me. Say thank you. So the way we use the bow maker is work out how long you want your tail. Now I want these tails to be a little bit of length, and I'm going to sort of have a good portion of it hanging out on one side. I've probably got about a good 8 centimeters or so. And then I want this bow, if you could have a look at this card here. I've got, it's like 3 layers in my bow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that now. So I've brought my baker's twine over the top of my bow maker with my tail hanging off, and I'm going to wrap this around 3 times. So it's going 1, 2, 3, and then bring it back to me again. I'm just going to cut my length off there. So once I've brought that piece, that's the one I've wrapped around 3 times and brought back to me, I'm now going to take him up, go through the hole at the top, bring him down, back up through the center again, and then with the other tail we're going to tie it off in a nice secure knot. And that's going to give us our bow. So if you don't like tying bows, this is actually quite a handy little tool to have. And then we'll just pull that off there, and there's our bow, and that bow is around about 1 inch in width. So now we need our little tag, and we need some glue dots. And I'm just going to pop my bow there on top of that glue dot. So my glue dot is now on the back of my bow, and I'm just actually placing that just above the hole of the tag. So it's actually not over that hole, but just a little bit above it. Just so then that glue dot has something to grab hold of. So now we're going to pop another dimensional at the bottom of our tag, and I'm going to place another glue dot on the back at the top of my tag, and it is going to go on the bottom right up. So I've got a glue dot there, and I've got my dimensional on the back there. So I'm just going to take that off there, and I'm just going to slip my tag underneath Santa's hand, just so it looks like Santa. Whoops. Just need to move that a little bit. Just there like that. So Santa's basically holding the bow. And we're just going to cut our ends off at a length that we're happy with. Let's remove that out of the road. So there's the front of our card done. Now we need this piece, which is going to be for the inside. And what I just thought I would do with this piece here is just, whoops, got those post-it notes coming everywhere. I'm going to grab my going to clean this down just to make sure that he's clean, because I don't think I did that when I was finished. I just want to clean that down again. And I'm going to position this just about there. All I want is just tree to go about there. Can ink that up in the soft suede again. And stamp him there. Might just pop a little bit more ink. That section. That's better. Move that over there. I'm ending up with ink and pens and everything everywhere, but that's the case usually with me. And we can stick that. So what I might do is might just put a sentiment on there as well. Put our Be Jolly. See if I can get this nice and straight underneath there. That looks better. Might just put a little bit of, I don't want to put any colour in this, but just I think a little bit of Winker Stella just on here. Just on those balls. At least the tree's got a little bit of decoration on it. Dry that off. Now if you go onto my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button and like my YouTube channel. Also the same with my Facebook page. If you know of anyone that could be interested in this card, please share on Facebook. I do appreciate everyone who is able to share my work for me. Okay, so that's the inside of our card. Just very, very simple. And there's our Santa on the outside of our card. So there's the two cards we've made. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Now let me just flip my camera around. Won't be one moment. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my card. I'm going to have to stop this live very soon because I think we're going to have a big storm. There's a little bit of thunder and that happening out there. And so let me move that light, it's reflecting in my glasses. So thank you again for joining me today. Please join me again next week. Let your friends know. Invite them to come along and join in as well. And we'll make another card. So have a lovely day, what's left of it, and have a really great week. And again, thank you very much for joining me. Bye for now.